righteousness, what? And unrighteousness. And it's starting all the way from what? The highest office. All the way down what? To the lower echelons. It's starting what? From the pulpit to the pews. Because God is bringing what? Judgment. He's exposing the real heart of the people. Y'all notice that? Because there's a spirit of rebellion that has risen up and said that, hey, we don't want to be subject to God anymore. I can hear this from the spirit. Ain't that what we're dealing with? We're dealing with an outright spirit of rebellion. We want to be our own God. We don't want to follow God's righteous standards, his laws. Ain't that how it was in the beginning of creation? And guess who's behind it? That old whisperer. That old what? Smooth-footed devil. Right behind the scenes. And guess what? Many of them have been beguiled. Many of them have what fell for the tricks and the snares of the devil. And many of what are in captivity. Because anytime you practice sin, anytime you practice immorality, you open yourself up what to the snares of the enemy. And we're living in a society where many people are in captivity. And the enemy what has sought to take power, control, influence what over their will. How many know that God has given us one of the greatest things that he never gave any of his creation? All the animals have been created to do a certain thing. But he gave man what? A will. Then he gave Adam and Eve a will in the beginning what? Of creation. Then. But how do you know that they gave up their will when they what? Sinned against God? And they became subject to what? The will of the enemy. They became subject to the deprived state of that Adamic nature. We all know how sin will work in our life. Sin is like a cancer, ain't it? Once that thing begins to what? To spread into your life, it will affect what? Your whole disposition. Yes, it will. It's just like, we're talking about a pandemic. But I shared with you before, God, there is a syndemic that's going on in our nation right now. It's affecting the hearts, the minds, and the will. And many have what comes subject. They've come under what? The snares, the devices of the wicked one. Y'all heard what I'm saying? It's time for us to open up our eyes, saints. When I was looking at the election, and I was getting the election, and I was just listening to all the different people. I'm on this side. I'm on that side. Know what side I'm on? I'm on the side that stands for righteousness. I'm on God's side. Sound like what Noah said back when Korah and them rose up. And their band rose up against Moses. And the Lord began to challenge them through his servant or his minister, Moses. Told him to get under censors and all that type of stuff. You know, if God called you to do what you're doing and to be in a position of leadership, then I want you to put your incense in one. And God told Moses, said, take all the people and ask them, whoever's on the Lord's side, get on this side. And God said, by the space of tomorrow, I'm going to cause what? The ground to open up. And here comes the Korah and all of his rebellious gang coming up against Moses, God's what? Chosen leader. The one he had rose up, he anointed and appointed to bring God's people out of what? Out of captivity. From under what? The oppression of what? Egypt. Or you could say under the oppression of the kingdom of darkness. Because the enemy comes what? To bring oppression. He comes what? To keep our people what in box. Egypt is a type of the world. The kingdom of Egypt is a type what? Of Pharaoh, or the type of Satan in his kingdom who had what? God's chosen people what? In captivity. And so what Moses did, God said, hey, y'all get y'all senses, and by this time tomorrow I want you to burn your incense before God. And Moses said, Lord, don't accept their sacrifice. And Moses said, by the space of tomorrow, if I'm not God's chosen and appointed leader, then the earth is going to open up. And what happened? When they rose up against Moses and challenged them, God caused the ground to open up and swallowed up all of what? Chorus. All of the families and all of the ones that decided they want to what? Take sides against God. And we're going to see a dividing line in the coming days, in the coming months. Who's really on the Lord's side? We're going to see that. I want to read these little notes I got. And I'm going to end it because I don't think the Holy Spirit took me in a whole other direction. We're living in a time, era, decade, culture, and society that many are being captive and been led by captivity by the snares, the bondage of the kingdom of darkness. We see so many in this age that are in bondage to all kinds of what? Vices. Turn on the TV, they got a medication for everything, don't they? Can you turn the TV on? They got something for everything. Habits, addictions, strongholds that will take what? Deliverance from God, who it will take deliverance from God to see many saved and set free. How many God wants to see people set free? It will take real answers and solutions from the throne of grace to set what? The captivity free. Many today in our generation have opened the doors to unseen forces of darkness through the ungodly what? And immoral lifestyles, through sin, through forbidden practice of spirituality wrapped up in a pretty package. How many know we got a lot of new brand spirituality? We got yoga. I'm just naming them. We got all kind of form of Eastern meditation. We got the worship of everything, the practice of everything that you can think of. And how many know these are the very things that are opening up these unseen forces? Many of this generation culture, because of ignorance and lack of spiritual foundation and moral and godly upbringing and fear of God. And how many know that we've gotten away from that? You know, one thing God told Moses and the children of Israel when he began to give them the commandments and he began to set up all the different ordinances for the priesthood and all those things when he raised up the 12 tribes of Israel as one of the responsibilities of the chief men or the heads of their household. It was what? To teach their kids the commandments. To raise them up in the things of God. To teach them what? The fear of God. And how did we get away from that this generation? You have a lot of mothers and fathers, young people, even some of our older adults that were taught these things have gotten away. Yeah. How many people you can knock on the door and say, how many of you in this house pray? You got a praying father, a praying mother. How many people in this house have mothers and fathers that take you to church? You don't see that anymore, do you? But you got mothers and fathers that's drinking and getting high, partying, and they're doing it right with what? With their children. No motherly, no fatherly, God-fearing what examples. And no wonder our generation is going to hell. We don't have the real spiritual fathers and leaders that we had back when Paul said we have many teachers, but we don't have what? Many spiritual what? Mothers and fathers that can mentor, that can cover, that can protect, that can safeguard our young people, to help them set boundaries and give them things to keep them from falling into the pitfalls in the snare. All of us might have had that upbringing. I had that upbringing when I was a kid. I don't care how we were in our younger age. Our parents made us go to church. I had a praying mother and father. I had praying people in our family. We over an age of teenagers, we get rebellious. We get disobedient. But one thing I can say about that generation, they did what the word says, train up in a child, what? In a way that he should go. And when he gets old, he won't do what? He won't depart from it. Y'all hear what I'm saying? We had many we don't have those leaders that help them to safeguard themselves and protect them from what the dangers and the consequences of involving themselves in practices, activities, and beliefs that are sinful, that are forbidden, and an abomination to God. Some of the things I don't practice right now today and participate in or in agreement with that we have filed legislation for is because of what? The spiritual foundation that my mom and dad. The reason many of us are saved today because there was somebody in our family that was what? Praying for us. Don't you know that? There was somebody praying for us that the enemy did not what? Have his way in our lives. More and more we're seeing a rise in all kinds of what? Abnormal, unnatural, uncontrolled, deviant, destructive, distasteful behavior and conduct. We have at one point in time women and men had some dignity and respect for themselves. When it came up in a certain generation, they had songs called Respect Yourself. At one point in time, women would feel very violated if some man was looking at them the wrong way. Some of these women, before they came out the door, they would look in the mirror and make sure their hair is done right. Make sure they had the proper attire on, men and women. But now we live in a very loose, a very lascivious, very lustful, very sensual, very perverted. Nobody wants to cover up themselves no more. And at the time we're living in right now, but people don't want to preach about this stuff. And we're living in such a time with these spiritual strongholds and bondages of the enemy that are on people that you can't even tell them the truth. Because you'll find yourself in a fight. Let me tell one of these young men and young women, hey, your wig is on the wrong way. Your skirt is up, your butt too tight. Let me tell one of them, they're ready to pull out a gun on me. They're ready to cuss me out from A to Z. But that's the time that we're living in, ain't it, y'all? We are seeing an outward expression and manifestation of things that are lawless, wicked, perverted, and borderline insane. Some of this stuff is straight insane. What we call normal is not normal anymore. Back in our day, they called it normal. We have people that got all kind of issues going on. But they're trying to normalize. It shows you the mindset of those that are in leadership. Don't. Nobody wants to call it what? A spade. A spade anymore, do it. There's been a shift in the mindset of many in this generation and culture. Mind-controlling spirits, seducing spirits, manipulation, and influencing the very thoughts, feelings, and the will of so many. I mean, we got some people under mind control right now. One of the main prevalent spirits that's operating in our society right now is the spirit of witchcraft. And the spirit of witchcraft covers what? Control, manipulation, witchcraft, deception. And many people are under the control of a higher power that's influencing what their thoughts. That's what Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. He says, what for the weapons of our warfare are what? Are not carnal. But they're what? They're mighty through God to pulling down what? Strongholds. Casting down what? Imagination and every high thing that exalts itself against what? The knowledge. And everything is trying to do what? Exalt itself. And how many know if we don't build ourselves upon the knowledge of the truth, we're just like a house that is built upon what? Sand. It won't stand. If we don't build our lives upon the foundation and the principles that God has written, guess what? Everything in our life is going to work. And guess what? This society is living in it like that right now. And we wonder why the gates of hell is prevailing. We wonder why we have the wickedness and the perversion and all this insane stuff going on. Because some of the people that lead our country, some of the people that lead high positions, all the way from the high positions all the way to the household, are insane. You got to be insane if you think that you don't need God in your life. You got to be under the control of an antichrist spirit. Come on. How in the world can the creation be more greater? How can the creation be more wiser, more intelligent, more infinite than the one who took us and formed us what? From the dust of the ground and breathed what life, the one who spoke the very world that we're looking at in existence. But guess what? It's possible because Adam and Eve did. They did. And you can look throughout history. Well, when men get away from God and they allow the enemy to come in, guess what? They become insane. Book of Noah, Sodom and Gomorrah. Look at the book of Judges of the history of God's chosen people. Read the book of Judges. It said at one point in time after Moses, Joshua had died. And at first they were following God's covenant. They were keeping his commandments. But then it says there came a generation that did not fear God. And what happened? The children of Israel got turned over to idols. They started worshiping Baal. They started offering up their children, sacrificing their children. They started getting over to all kind of what? Abominable. And what it is, it said the anger of the Lord was kindled against them. And God allowed them to be what? To be under captivity by their own enemies. And many of these enemies they had, they were what? Pagans. They were idol worshipers. And we're living in a time right now where people rather what? Turn from the true and living God to worship all these other idols, all these other spirits. Look at America. We got so many practices that have crept in. And you can see this stuff right before your eyes. In the church too. We have tried to mix Jesus up with divination. We've tried to mix Jesus up with all these different other spiritual practices. We have people consulting witches and open to witchcraft and divination and all this stuff and horoscopes and all this stuff that don't even line up with the word. And we wonder why people what? Are in bondage. When the house of God, the people of God, ought to be those that God has called to minister deliverance to those who what? Oppose themselves. And we're living in a time where God said that more so the ministry of deliverance is going to be necessary. Because there's a lot of people now under the influence. People that are going to need to be set free. Now, I'm getting about close. We're seeing more people demonically oppressed, and many are what? Demonically possessed. Don't you know that? There are many people demonically oppressed. And there are people that are what? Demonically possess. It's different. Many of us